Hello and welcome to the new episode of Dakota Boys Talk Movies. Tonight's episode is a little bittersweet, but at the same time, it still gives us a chance to reminisce and go over some of the better roles of the late Mr. Alan Rickman, a very talented actor, you could say, because as both of us were going over our list to pick three, it was tough because he had done so many great things, and when you go over, you realize how he could be sensitive, he could be funny, and of course, as we all know, he could be downright evil. And yeah, so we just wanted to bring an episode to kind of go over him, just because he was someone that basically Dakota and I have more or less grown up with. He came onto the scene movie-wise in the biggest way with 1988's Die Hard, playing the villain Hans Gruber, or as a lot of people call him now, the better Gruber. Now that there's been a couple Grubers in the Die Hard franchise. But Dakota, what was your first Alan Rickman movie that you remember seeing?
Honestly, it was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where he was the Sheriff of Nottingham. Which
I believe was 1991?
Yes.
Okay, so that was your... And what were you scared of him after seeing that movie?
No, I actually thought he was... I don't know, like, almost kind of cool in a way.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was curious about. Because that was what was weird, because he was downright nasty in that movie to a point where he just forced Marion to marry him and things like that, and yet you still kind of thought he was cool, and that was kind of weird to think about. But, yeah.
Yeah, that movie... Well, the thing about Alan Rickman is when you're talking about his career, there's really no low points in it.
No, he's had a pretty... I mean, his performances-wise, he's pretty... You can usually count on him.
Yeah.
He's always going to do fine, and I think it's just because he has a presence to him to where he can just kind of be whatever you need him to be in those times. And I don't know if it has to do with his British demeanor or what, but obviously when he plays villains, he says that sneer. He has that sneer he can give, almost like a snarl, where he looks like a wolf or something that could just attack at any moment. But as I stated, he can play sensitive, and we'll talk about those things in this episode. My first blood, I think, was probably, either Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, or possibly Quigley Down Under. One of those two. I just remember seeing both of those as a youngin'. So, I'm not sure which one would have been first. Probably Robin Hood. Just because that was right there at the beginning. Of course, so was Quigley. But I still think maybe Robin Hood was first, just because that was a big movie. Like, that movie was everywhere, because Costner was the top of his game, and that was Alan Rickman got a lot of acclaim for his role in that movie. And
yes, even the unfortunate Ryan Adams song
that movie, and then there's that song
was on every
I die for you, I die for you.
Yes, it was everywhere.
Oh, everything I do.
Yeah, it's everything I do for you.
And that was like played at every dance to this day. You still have to slow dance to that song, where boys with sweaty palms put their hands on the waists of girls, and girls put their sweaty palms on the shoulders of the guy, and they awkwardly rock back and forth.
Well, he wasn't all that bad, because I'd still take that song over anything Keisha's done.
Well, you can't compare
one song.
You're starting to compare apples and oranges here, though. I don't know if you.
Well, I just did it.
You gotta at least compare him to another guy singer or something. Yes, there was that song too. But we're not here to talk about Ryan Adams or the song "Everything I Do It For You." We're here to talk about the late Alan Rickman, who unfortunately just died of cancer. And as we're filming this, like just a week ago, at the age of 69, which just isn't very old to be dying. I mean,
I was actually kind of surprised to find out he was that old.
Yeah, I mean, I figured he was in his 60s, but I didn't realize he was that close to 70. Yeah.
He didn't really come off as being that old either. I mean,
no, but once I, just looking at a little bit of stuff for this episode, realized that he didn't even get into acting till he's 28.
Yeah.
Well, when you put that into perspective, like, okay, well, if he's 28, then, and it's been that many years since he got started, okay, then he would have had to have been, a little up there. But again, not terribly old. In this day and age, if it weren't for things like cancer or certain diseases like that, you usually live into your 80s or 90s or whatever. And so, But anyway, he's gone. So we're gonna talk about some of his best performances in our opinion. Anyway, so Dakota, why don't you go ahead and throw out your first one?
My first one was a little bit of an independent film he did in the 90s with Kevin Smith. This movie was pretty controversial in the when it came out, just because of the movie was about Christianity overall. It dealt with some themes that weren't very popular, and there was actually some pretty heavy protesting against the film. But in the movie, Alan Rickman,
by the Catholic Church specifically.
Yes, that's who Kevin Smith, although he is Catholic, does seem to draw the ire of Catholics. But in the movie, he played Metatron, the voice of God. And it was right from the get-go, his character in the movie was just kind of killed it. He appears to this woman in her bedroom, and he's on fire. He's an angel, and he's on fire, and you hear his big booming voice saying, "I am Metatron," and his wings span out, and the lady just panics and like runs and grabs a fire extinguisher and puts him out. And but yeah, it's if you've seen the movie, it's kind of complicated to talk about, but I won't really go into details here because talking about it could probably take about 15 minutes easily. Just trying to tell you the plot of it and who everyone was. This is one of the movies that is kind of famous just because of the fact that Jay and Silent Bob were in it. If you know who they are, kudos to you. If not, well, you're probably in the majority. But this was one of those movies where I can't really remember the year it came out, but it was one of the first times I ever saw Alan Rickman where he wasn't a villain in a movie.
It came out in 1999.
99. I thought so. But very, very fine acting. He was actually, for a Kevin Smith movie, this was one of the bigger ones.
Yeah, one where he actually had a budget.
Yeah, and it had Salma Hayek, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck. It was supposed to be this big epic movie, and it really wasn't, but it was marketed that way. And Alan Rickman was really one of the bright spots in it, just because he was just in a class of its own in this movie. Nobody even came close to touching him. Not even Alanis Morissette playing God.
Oh God.
That's
right. Are you kidding me? Is that really what? Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, what about you?
Of course, she had that song, I guess. What if God was one of us? So,
what about you?
The first one I'd like to bring up is one where it's not a conventional Alan Rickman role you think of, because you always think of, like I said, the villain, or in some cases maybe something funny, a funny thing. But first one I'd like to bring up is his role in the 1995 movie Sense and Sensibility, which was a film based on a Jane Austen novel. And in it, he plays Colonel Brandon, where he's like, you just, like, I'm completely heterosexual, and yet I wanted to marry this guy. I mean, he was like just a complete gentleman in this movie, just like the nicest guy who was very thoughtful. And it was like, and I remember when I saw this movie, it was like, this is Alan Rickman. You know, I'm just so used to him being Hans Gruber and the Sheriff of Nottingham, and here he is being like this just nice, tender guy or whatever. And he just nailed it. He did such a good job in the role. And the other thing that's kind of interesting about the movie is that, you know, of course, this is 1995, so he was a middle-aged guy, and he was wooing Kate Winslet, who was more or less playing. She wasn't supposed to be terribly old. Well, she wasn't. Even in reality, this was even before Titanic. You know, that Kate. So she was probably like, I think, supposed to be like only 18 or 19 in the movie, and she probably wasn't.
Whoa.
She probably even wasn't much older in reality, and so. But again, you know, this was taking place in a time period where I don't think that was totally far fetched, either for maybe a middle-aged man to, you know, she's still an adult, I guess. But yeah, it was just a movie where you just really liked him, and it's one where when his name comes up, I think of it, and I think the reason I think of it is he's just so good in it. You like him. Like I said, I wanted to marry him, you know, in this movie, and this movie kind of got some attention just because of the fact that Emma Thompson actually she's in it, and then she wrote the screenplay and won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for this movie, and so it got it even a little more attention because of that too. But yeah, so if you're into, like, if you like the Jane Austen type movie, well, you don't want to say Jane Austen type with this one because it is a Jane Austen story. But if you haven't seen it, it's actually a really good movie. I mean, I can be a softie at times. I don't always need to have guns in movies or fart jokes. I found this one really good, considering it was even directed by Ang Lee, who I usually don't like ever. So it's one where he did a good job too, apparently, directing. But yeah, that's my first one is Sense and Sensibility. So Dakota, you want to throw out your next one?
Since we're getting to the softer side of ourselves,
side of the Dakota boys,
I might as well lead with Love Actually, a movie where Alan Rickman didn't play a villain at all. He was actually pretty far from a villain. He was he played a suburban dad, a dad in.
Spit it out.
I'm working on it, man. Don't rush me. Don't rush me. He played a dad married to Emma Thompson in the movie.
They're together again, but this time they're actually together.
Yeah, they play this couple that have kind of been together for years and years and years. Things have kind of gotten a little stale at home, and his pretty young secretary starts flirting with him, and he doesn't ever go through with it. But you kind of hope he doesn't, even though his secretary is just drop dead gorgeous. You hope he remains faithful to his wife, who Emma Thompson was actually pretty good in this movie. But it was once again, it was one of those roles where I hadn't seen Alan Rickman be this play someone like this before, and it was actually pretty fun to watch. You know, sometimes you get actors who they get typecast. Gary Oldman was typecast for years as the villain. Then he showed him Batman Begins as James Gordon. You know, one of the ultimate good guys in film.
Yeah, and
here Alan Rickman was pretty much playing against type because not only was he a dad, but he was a pretty devoted husband. And that was that in a way kind of just blew me away. Like, wow, he's actually just some poor fool that doesn't really know what he's doing.
Just some normal modern day guy.
Yeah, that was kind of surreal. And you know what? He actually did get to be funny in this movie too. There's a great scene with Rowan Atkinson in this, who plays Mr. Bean.
Always funny.
Yeah, he's not playing Mr. Bean in this movie.
He should be.
He plays a very, very uptight jewelry salesperson at the store. But it's just hilarious. I
believe Love Actually was written and directed by the guy who actually, with Rowan Atkinson, wrote Mr. Bean stuff, which is probably why Rowan Atkinson. Well, I think in Love Actually, every British person who can act was in Love Actually,
and Billy Bob Thornton,
and
who was pretty much playing Bill Clinton.
Okay,
that was
there you go.
If you're ever curious what Billy Bob Thornton would be like if he tried to play Bill Clinton in a movie, just watch that.
And if you're curious about what it would look like to see John Travolta playing Bill Clinton, just watch Primary Colors, which also has Emma Thompson. Whoa. Full circle.
Whoa.
Full circle. Okay, so that's Love Actually. For me, my next one would be, oh man, just his side-splittingly hilarious turn in Galaxy Quest playing Dr. Lazarus, which is basically supposed to be this movie's spin on Spock, more or less.
Yeah, the whole movie is supposed to be a satire of the original Star Trek cast.
It's not supposed to be. It is. This movie is like a spot-on parody of Star Trek fanatics, and oh man, does this... Galaxy Quest is... I feel like it wasn't appreciated in its time, which this was another 1999 movie. It just wasn't, like, it was liked then. I saw it in theaters and loved it. And it just feels like, though, even though it did well, it just kind of got thrown by the wayside over the years. Watch it. It's still funny. It's still relevant. And I think it just reminds you, like, how good Tim Allen can be and stuff, too, because Tim Allen plays the William Shatner in this type in this movie. Sigourney Weaver. But the Alan Rickman, in my opinion, though, just completely steals this movie. Him and Sam Rockwell, because Sam Rockwell's in this movie. He's pretty good, too. But what's great about Alan Rickman in this movie, too, is that Dr. Lazarus is an alien, and so he has this prosthetic headpiece that he wears. But what's funny is that when they show him at home in his apartment, like talking on the phone to Sigourney Weaver's character, even at home, he's still wearing the alien headpiece. The whole movie, you never see him without it. Like gets ripped, at one point near the end. But you never see him without the headpiece on, and I just think that's just hilarious.
I think it was supposed to be a riff on the fact that Leonard Nimoy supposedly always asked at the end of each filming to take home his ears from the movies.
Oh, okay.
So people that I don't know if that's true. That's just one of the rumors I had heard.
Well, I didn't know. I mean, some of it I'm sure was just because they knew it'd be funny, but I always thought maybe it's because Alan Rickman's character, Alexander Dane, that's his real name. Dr. Lazarus is his name in the show Galaxy Quest, and who the aliens who mistake... Because the movie is basically... Think of it parodies Star Trek, but it's kind of the plot of Three Amigos, where the aliens think that these TV show people are actually these people and can help them. But he considers himself like this great British stage actor. I think is kind of takes his craft really seriously. So I just thought like maybe his method acting was why he wore the alien headpiece all the time. Oh my gosh, everything about Galaxy Quest is funny. But like I said, here you have this everything hilarious movie, and Alan Rickman still stands out. And so I think that just shows his comedy chops. I mean, he had a good role written for him, but he made it work. You just loved him. And this is with really good people around him, like Sam Rockwell, Tony Shalhoub, Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver. And this is not even talking about the guys who played the aliens, which their names are escaping me right now. I can't remember their names. But yeah, just a great comedic turn for him and just a great movie. So yeah, that's why I like when we were talking about ones we were gonna pick. I was like, Galaxy Quest. I gotta have Galaxy Quest just because I love this movie. So yeah, but Dakota, why don't you go ahead and do your next one?
My third and final entry is going to be one we've already talked about.
Yeah, I guess.
So, yeah, that's why I stopped you with the drum roll, because I feel like I've deflated any anticipation for this one.
Well, that's more of a fart than a deflating.
But anyway, my third and final greatest film starring Alan Rickman is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Hey, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Everything I do it for Alan Rickman. Something like that.
Wow, that was really bad. You could never do that again. That'd be great.
Nobody should sing like Ryan Adams. So, yeah, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So, do you like this movie a lot, Dakota?
It's okay. It's actually, considering how some films were made in the 90s, how they were shot, it's actually held up well in comparison to a lot of others.
That is true, because, you know, there's just the movies every decade that you're like, well, this movie's definitely of its time. And they just stick out. Like, and when you see a 90s movie, you know. But you're right. This one kind of transcends its time. There's, I mean, certain things about it, maybe casting choices and things like that make it stick out. You know, like, what's her name? The lady who plays Maid Marian.
I almost said Mary Steenburgen.
That's what I almost said, too. That's really funny. It is Mary something, though, right? No.
It is, I think.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, she kind of has 90s frizzy hair.
Yeah. For those of you wondering what that
Mary
is.
Elizabeth Mastrotonio, or however you say her last name. She's in The Abyss, too.
That's right.
Yeah, she kind of maybe makes the 90s stick out. And Christian Slater. But other than that, it still transcends pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest thing about this movie was that at the time had a lot of detractors was the fact that Kevin Costner kind of had a faux British accent and then just gave up on it.
Yeah, it was like he had it and then he didn't have it and then it was kind of back and then it just was like whatever.
To be fair, the director actually told him not to do it because he thought it was just bad. And he couldn't get him to stop.
Well, Costner is like a good old boy, and so yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's just better at playing a cowboy. So
he tried to be too method, I think, and use it. And whereas Christian Slater, I'm not sure what he was trying to do.
Nobody knows what he was doing.
Yeah,
that's why I love in Robin Hood Men in Tights. They spoofed the Errol Flynn one, I think, a little bit more, but they spoofed this one too. Yeah. And when Cary Elwes, he plays Robin Hood in that, he says something like, when he's talking about how he's the better Robin Hood, he says something, and I have a British accent, because Cary Elwes is actually British, and it's great. He looks at the camera and says it basically to just take a knock at Kevin Costner. But yeah.
Yeah, one thing I remember about that film is they do try to parody how the Sheriff of Nottingham was in Prince of Thieves.
What's that?
They do. That's the one thing they pretty much try to parody was Alan Rickman from Prince of Thieves.
Oh, I see. Yes, yeah.
That's like the one thing. Otherwise, it's all Errol Flynn movies that they're parodying.
Mm-hmm.
From the...
Well, and they parody the fact that because Alan Rickman has a mole in Prince of Thieves, and it moves. There's a few times it's not in the same spot, and so the Prince John character in Man in Tights is a mole, and then all of a sudden it's in another spot, and then it's in another spot, and then the sheriff goes, "Wasn't your mole right there before?" And Prince John's like, "I have a mole." It's good stuff. But, wow, we're talking about Men in Tights a lot, though. Whoops.
Yeah. Cut it out, Steven.
But that's part of it, is that Prince of Thieves isn't the greatest movie in the world. But Alan Rickman is still good. in the movie, and so it just shows his acting chops.
Plus, this is like one of the few movies where he actually got to be physical, because he did actually take up fencing to try to take on Kevin Costner in the end.
He probably listened to that Olivia Newton-John song also to get going. So, yeah.
Hopefully he didn't put on spandex and those long socks that reach up to your knee.
He's wearing Spanx under his outfit.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's one of those movies that it's still like watchable today, but it could have been better.
If you can find the director's cut of this film, I would suggest watching it, because they actually put in more scenes with the sheriff in there.
Yeah, basically the director's cut should just be called the Sheriff Cut. There's just like more sinister moments with Alan Rickman's character.
And that crazy witch.
Yeah.
Which I don't even remember her name.
I don't either. I remember her name in Men in Tights. Her name in Men in Tights is Latrine. Oh, God. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's funny. Well, moving on.
All right, Steven, what do you got for us?
Go to my villainous role. This is one movie I always really liked. I love the guy who plays the hero in it, and I thought he's really good in this movie. But also, Alan Rickman nails it as the villain once more. This movie was a year before Prince of Thieves. In the movie's Quigley Down Under.
Wow, they were that close together, huh?
Quigley was 1990, and Prince of Thieves was 1991. So, yeah. And this was only 2 years after he was the iconic Hans Gruber in Die Hard. And so he just had like these pretty popular villain roles, kind of one after the other, more or less. And Quigley Down Under, what it's about is obviously it takes place in Australia. Why Down Under is in the name. And it's about this cowboy from the States named Quigley, played by Tom Selleck and his mustache. He's from Wyoming, I believe.
Yeah.
And he answers a help wanted ad about come to Australia and we'll pay you. It was just this huge amount of money to basically kill dingoes. He thinks he's going there to basically kill dingoes for this rancher played by Alan Rickman. Well, when he gets there, you realize that Quigley's smarter than maybe you might think, that just like some dumb cowboy from the United States is. He gets there and he goes, there's no way you're paying me this much money to come here and kill dingoes for you. And he kind of sees these guys who pick him up are kind of sleazy, and he realizes that he's there to basically be a hired assassin for Alan Rickman's character. Alan Rickman wants to basically get rid of the Aborigines, which are the native people to Australia, and so he hires Tom Selleck to basically, go murder the natives of Australia. And, of course, Quigley doesn't really take kindly to this, and, there's kind of a falling out, and they become... This whole tussle causes... basically Quigley to... what do you call it? Quigley says no in such a way that he becomes this guy's enemy, and then the rest of the movie is kind of them dealing with that aspect. And so,
what he means by that is they try to kill him.
They basically try to kill him, and so
except he turns the tables.
Yeah, and so because he's the reason he gets hired for the job over there is that he has this extra long muzzle loader rifle that he can shoot a ridiculous distance, and so he kind of uses that to his advantage. But Alan Rickman, just once again, is just really good at playing just a guy you don't like, but at the same time, you want to follow him through the movie. Sometimes there's a bad guy in the movie, you're like, all right, can he just die already or something? But you kind of want to see his story flesh out, and And honestly, when I rewatch this again, I realized how he kind of, like, even though Tom Selleck's good in this movie, he kind of makes Tom Selleck look bad. Just because Alan Rickman is always just just always does solid performances, in the stuff he's in. And so it's just another movie I really enjoyed him in. And I remember seeing over the years through the 90s growing up, and then obviously, still to this day, I just saw it not too long ago again. And so, yeah, it's another one I really enjoy. But, there's ones that we didn't bring up just because we feel like they're kind of so obvious. Die Hard, where he plays Hans Gruber, that's the one that put him on the map in the movies. But then another character that he played for 8 movies. Was it 8 movies?
Yes,
yeah, 7 books, 8 movies. He played Snape in the Harry Potter series.
Severus Snape.
The
And Half-Blood Prince.
Ooh, spoiler alert.
Oh, did I ruin it for you?
No, I knew that, but once again, he's good at playing it where you're like, I like him, but I don't like him, but I kind of like him, but I think I'm supposed to hate him, and wow, he just nails that character.
You want to see a movie that really shows off his talents. Sweeney Todd.
Oh, okay. Another one where he plays Gaslees.
Yeah, you see, he's not necessarily evil in this, as he is just scuzzy. And you do see him sing, and he does a pretty good job.
It is a musical.
Yeah. But, yeah, if you're bored someday, and if you have the means to, I'd check that one out. Preferably not before you go to bed, because you may have trouble sleeping.
Another one Dakota brought up, and I didn't really care for this movie, but he was definitely the best part, is he was the voice of Marvin, the robot, the chronically depressed robot in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And why it's funny is just that he's so good at doing the depressed voice for the robot. He's really just better than the whole movie around him.
Yes, that is so true. Movies without his character, or scenes in the movie without his character Marvin, definitely suffer.
Yeah. And so, and another voice he did more recently was he's the Blue Caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland. And I think that might be his last film credit. The sequel to that comes out this year, Alice Through the Looking Glass. And according to IMDb, his last credit will be the voice of the Blue Caterpillar once again in that sequel. But a guy who we were talking about how he's had ups and downs that any actor can have with movies he chooses to be in, but he's always been a pretty solid actor. When you think Alan Rickman, like Ben Affleck is a name that comes up now, and he's considered like this prestigious actor/director now. But at the same time, you still remember the years when he was kind of the joke tabloid guy. And what's interesting about Rickman is when you think about Alan Rickman, there's never really a time where you think, oh, he's the sucky. There was the suck. You always think of him in a light where he's like, oh no, he was Hans Gruber in the day, and then he was the Sheriff of Nottingham, and what an iconic role. And then, the voices he's done, how he can be funny, how you liked him in Sense and Sensibility, as a nice guy, and Severus Snape, where do you love him, do you hate him, what's going on? And so, you just always, you realize that he had a pretty good resume. But everybody dies. Just kind of unfortunate, so.
Wow, I just messed that up. Valor Morgulis, I believe is what it's called.
Wow. What is that in English? Is that like Latin or something?
I believe it's Old Valerian. It means all men must die.
All men must die. It's true. And women.
That's true.
Even women die. It's crazy.
You know what? That's not how the saying goes, okay? Maybe it should be changed to all people die.
All my peeps gonna be dead. So we just kind of wanted to go over, just because it was a guy who had a resume that we realized had a lot of roles we appreciated, and that we would just kind of reflect on those and go over some of our favorites in his long filmography. So
yeah, one thing,
but unfortunately not as long as some people's are.
Yeah, he. This is the time of the year when they're handing out all these awards. I'm not really sure if he ever won anything. Pretty sure he never won an Academy Award.
Yeah, I don't know if he ever won. He might have been nominated, but
yeah, but this is an actor who the fact that he didn't win doesn't matter because he's going to be going down in legend. I mean, 50 years from now, people still will be watching Die Hard, just being amazed by his performance. Probably not so much Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
Quigley Down Under, though, yes. And a few other films. The Harry Potter series, which a lot of people just love him in.
Yep.
But,
the closest he ever got to the Academy was, and this wasn't even close because he won a Golden Globe, but it was for a TV performance in the 1996 TV movie Rasputin, where he played Rasputin.
What?
And so, yeah, I kind of remember that. And he won Best Performance for the Golden Globes. He won an Emmy for that. And then he's won a lot of BAFTAs for different things, he won for Robin Hood. Well, actually, now that I look, I guess BAFTAs, he won for Robin Hood, and he was just nominated for Sense and Sensibility. Michael Collins. He's been, the Screen Actors Guild has honored him, but yeah, like you're saying though, even though he isn't an Oscar winner, he's still someone who's going to be remembered, just for being iconic in many different movies. So, yeah.
Alan Rickman, the man, the myth, the legend.
Definitely will have legend status, like you said, just between Severus Snape and Hans Gruber alone. But I think with that, we'll close out this episode of Dakota Boys Talk Movies. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing some of Alan Rickman's movies. Some you probably knew, but hopefully we, fed you some new ones that you maybe forgot about and never knew of. Made you appreciate more. Check those out. Like you said, even if the movie around him isn't as good, he's still great. So, but yeah, remember to subscribe to our show on whatever way you want to do that with, and like us on Facebook for updates on all that jazz. And yeah, we hope you're doing that. So yeah, this is Steven.
And this is Dakota.
Have a great night.